Did you know that something as simple and everyday as reheating your dinner from last night could potentially be adding hidden risks to your health? We all love leftovers, don't we? It saves time, it saves money, and it's convenient. We've done it for years, generations, even. But there's a painful reality that often goes unnoticed. How we store and reheat certain common foods can actually alter their chemical composition, sometimes creating harmful substances. It's a little secret tucked away in our kitchens that most of us aren't aware of. But it's particularly important as we get older, and our bodies might be a bit more sensitive to these things. These changes in food, when consumed repeatedly over time, could potentially contribute to long-term health concerns, including things as serious as raising your risk of certain types of cancer or even impacting your cognitive health and raising the risk of dementia. Now, that sounds quite alarming. I know. But the good news is that understanding which foods are riskier and why means you can make simple adjustments to protect yourself without giving up entirely on the convenience of prepared meals. It's not about fear. It's about being informed and making smart choices for your well-being. In this video, we're going to look closely at 5 common foods that fall into this category, foods you probably have in your kitchen right now, and discuss why reheating them might be a concern, and, more importantly, what you can do instead. It's about empowering you with knowledge to navigate your kitchen safely and deliciously. This isn't complicated science. It's practical knowledge for a healthier life. So, settle in, and let's explore these 5 foods together. And make sure you watch right to the very end, because there's something I want to share that might truly surprise you and change how you think about preparing meals going forward. Let's start by diving into the first few foods on our list. These are foods many of us cook regularly, often making a bit extra to enjoy the next day. Our first concern, and one that might surprise you, involves certain types of vegetables, specifically those rich in nitrates, like spinach, beetroot, and celery. Now, nitrates themselves aren't inherently bad. They occur naturally in many healthy vegetables. The issue arises when these nitrates are cooked, stored incorrectly, and then reheated during cooking, and especially upon reheating. Nitrates can convert into nitrites. While nitrites are also naturally present in some foods and even produced in our bodies, the real problem starts when nitrites react with other compounds, particularly proteins, to form something called nitrosamines. And here's where the potential risk comes in. Nitrosamines are known carcinogens, substances that have been linked to an increased risk of cancer. Studies, although often complex and looking at various dietary factors, have pointed towards higher consumption of foods high in nitrosamines being associated with a greater risk of certain cancers, particularly digestive tract cancers. When you cook a large batch of spinach or a hearty stew with celery, and then cool it slowly or leave it out before reheating, you're creating conditions where this conversion from nitrates to nitrites and potentially nitrosamines is more likely to happen. Reheating it again, especially repeatedly, can increase the concentration of these potentially harmful compounds. Think about that lovely spinach dish you had for dinner. If you didn't finish it all and plan to warm it up tomorrow, you could be inadvertently increasing your exposure to these compounds. It's a subtle process. Not like a single meal will cause harm, but consistent exposure over years from regularly reheating these specific vegetables could contribute to cumulative risk. So, what's the practical takeaway here? Does this mean you should never eat spinach or celery? Absolutely not. These vegetables are incredibly healthy and full of vital nutrients. The key isn't avoiding them, but being mindful of how you handle the leftovers. The best approach for nitrate-rich vegetables like spinach, celery, and beetroot is to cook only what you plan to eat in one sitting. If you do have leftovers, cool them down as quickly as possible after cooking. Don't leave them sitting on the counter for hours. Transfer them to a clean, airtight container and get them into the refrigerator promptly. When it comes to reheating, it's generally best to avoid reheating these particular vegetables if possible. If you must reheat, ensure it's heated thoroughly and only reheat the portion you plan to eat right away, and only reheat it once. A safer option is often to enjoy the leftovers cold, perhaps added to a salad or a sandwich, provided they were stored correctly from the start. The risks are significantly lower when they are eaten cold. as the high heat required for reheating is what accelerates the chemical conversion. This might mean a shift in how you think about meal prepping with these specific greens, but it's a simple change that reduces a potential long-term risk. Now, let's move on to our second food group. And this is one that's incredibly common in many households: rice. Yes, plain old rice. The risk here isn't directly about the rice itself changing into something carcinogenic when reheated, but rather about a specific type of bacteria called Bacillus cereus. This bacterium is commonly found in soil and can contaminate rice, while cooking kills the bacteria. Its spores can survive the cooking process if cooked rice is left standing at room temperature for too long. These spores can multiply and produce toxins. It's these toxins, not the bacteria itself, that can cause food poisoning symptoms like vomiting and diarrhea. Now, you might wonder, what does this have to do with cancer or dementia? While food poisoning itself isn't directly linked to those diseases, frequent bouts of it or a constant low-level exposure to bacterial toxins can put a significant strain on your body. It can impact your gut health, contribute to chronic inflammation, and potentially weaken your immune system over time. Some research suggests links between poor gut health, chronic inflammation, and an increased risk of various chronic diseases, including cognitive decline and certain cancers. So, while reheating itself doesn't create the toxin, the improper storage before reheating does. The act of reheating a batch of rice that already contains these toxins will not destroy them. Because the toxins are heat-resistant, you're essentially warming up a potential source of food poisoning. The critical step with rice is rapid cooling and proper storage. As soon as you've finished serving rice, if you have any leftovers, cool them down as quickly as possible. Divide large portions into smaller containers so they cool faster. Get them into the refrigerator within 1 hour. Ideally, sooner. Especially in warm weather. Store them in the fridge for no longer than 1 day before reheating. When you do reheat rice, make sure it's steaming hot all the way through, reaching an internal temperature of at least 75 degrees, no under 65 degrees. And critically, just like with the vegetables, only reheat rice once. Never reheat rice more than once. If you cooked a large batch, only take out the portion you need for that meal and reheat just that amount. Discard any rice that's been left out at room temperature for more than an hour or has been stored in the fridge for longer than a day. It might feel wasteful, but it's a small price to pay for avoiding potentially harmful bacterial toxins that can compromise your health over time. These aren't minor tummy aches we're talking about. While most cases are mild, severe food poisoning can be very debilitating, particularly for older adults, and repeatedly exposing your system to toxins adds a burden that can contribute to the overall wear and tear linked to age-related diseases. Paying attention to how you handle rice is a simple, yet incredibly effective step in safeguarding your health. Moving on from rice, let's consider another protein source that's a staple in many diets: poultry, specifically chicken and turkey. Leftover roast chicken is a classic. Isn't it perfect for sandwiches or adding to salads the next day? However, reheating poultry also carries a risk, primarily related to bacteria like Salmonella and Campylobacter, which are common on raw chicken. While cooking thoroughly kills these bacteria, handling and storage afterwards are crucial. If cooked chicken cools slowly at room temperature or isn't stored correctly in the fridge, these bacteria can multiply rapidly. When you reheat the chicken, the danger comes if it's not heated through properly and evenly. If parts of the chicken remain lukewarm, any surviving bacteria can continue to thrive, leading to food poisoning. Again, while food poisoning from poultry might not directly cause cancer or dementia, it significantly impacts your overall health, causing severe digestive upset, dehydration, and stress on your system. Repeated infections or chronic low-level exposure to toxins from poorly handled food can contribute to systemic inflammation and weaken your body's defenses, which are factors linked to various age-related health issues. To safely enjoy leftover poultry, follow these simple rules. Firstly, cool cooked chicken quickly and store it in a clean, airtight container in the refrigerator within 2 hours of cooking. For reheating, ensure the chicken is piping hot all the way through. It shouldn't just be warm, it needs to be steaming. Break up larger pieces to help them heat evenly. If you're using a microwave, make sure to stir or rotate the food halfway through the reheating process and let it stand for a minute or two afterwards to ensure heat distributes. If using an oven or hob, check the thickest part to ensure it's hot, like rice. Only reheat chicken once. If you have a lot of leftover chicken, plan to use it in different ways over a couple of days, taking out only the portion you need each time to reheat. Using leftover chicken cold in salads or sandwiches is generally safer, provided it was cooled and stored correctly from the start, as you avoid the pitfalls of insufficient reheating. The key is minimizing the time it spends in the danger zone temperature range between 4 degrees and 60 degrees or 49 degrees and 140 degrees, where bacteria multiply rapidly. Being diligent with chilling and ensuring thorough reheating takes a little extra effort, but vastly reduces the risk of exposing yourself to harmful bacteria that can compromise your health and vitality. It's about respecting the food and understanding the potential risks involved in improper handling, especially as our immune systems might not be as robust as they once were. These are practical steps that make a real difference in protecting your digestive health and reducing your body's overall burden from potential pathogens. Now, let's talk about our fourth food category, which often goes hand in hand with leftovers and quick meals: processed meats. This includes things like sausages, bacon, ham, and some pre-cooked deli meats. These foods often contain added nitrates and nitrites as preservatives to extend shelf life and enhance color. We touched upon nitrates and nitrites when discussing vegetables, but the issue is amplified with processed meats because of the way they are produced and cured. When these meats are cooked, especially at high temperatures, and then subsequently reheated, the nitrates and nitrites they contain can readily form nitrosamines, just like with the vegetables. As we mentioned, nitrosamines are known carcinogens. Consuming processed meats has been consistently linked in numerous large-scale studies to an increased risk of colorectal cancer and potentially other types of cancer as well. While this link exists whether the meat is eaten fresh or reheated. The reheating process, particularly repeated reheating or heating to very high temperatures, can potentially increase the formation of these harmful compounds, adding to the cumulative risk. Think about reheating leftover bacon or sausages, foods that are already high in saturated fat and often cooked at high heat initially. Warming them up again might increase the level of these questionable compounds. So, what's the advice here? It's probably best to limit your consumption of processed meats in general, regardless of reheating. They are often high in sodium, unhealthy fats, and additives. However, if you do eat them and have leftovers, try to avoid reheating them if possible. For instance, leftover cooked ham or chicken slices might be better eaten cold in a sandwich or salad. If you absolutely must reheat processed meats, do so thoroughly, but avoid charring or overcooking them, as high temperatures can accelerate the formation of nitrosamines. And again, reheat only once. The less you reheat these types of foods, the better. It's a simple way to reduce your potential exposure to compounds linked to cancer risk over the long term. It's about being mindful of the cumulative effect of what we eat and how we prepare it. Choosing fresh, unprocessed meats more often, or opting for plant-based proteins, can be healthier alternatives that don't carry the same reheating risks. While the direct link to dementia from processed meats and reheating isn't as well established as the cancer link, diets high in processed foods, unhealthy fats, and inflammatory compounds are generally considered detrimental to brain health over time. So, reducing your intake of processed meats and being cautious with reheating aligns with a broader strategy for promoting both physical and cognitive health as you age. Finally, let's look at our fifth category: foods cooked in certain oils, especially if those oils have been heated multiple times or if the food itself is fried. This is a bit broader but equally important. When cooking oils are heated, particularly to high temperatures, they can break down and form potentially harmful compounds like aldehydes and trans fats. Repeatedly heating the same oil, as is often done in commercial frying, is particularly problematic. But even in a home kitchen, if you've cooked something in oil and then reheat the leftovers that are still coated in that oil, you could be increasing your exposure to these compounds. Some studies have linked high consumption of foods cooked in reused or overheated oils and the presence of these aldehydes and trans fats. to increased inflammation, oxidative stress, and damage to cells. Chronic inflammation and oxidative stress are considered key underlying factors in the development of many age-related diseases, including certain cancers and neurodegenerative conditions like dementia. Think about leftover fried chicken, chips, or even stir-fries where the oil was heated very hot. Reheating these dishes can re-expose the food to heat, potentially creating more of these undesirable compounds. The best approach here is to be mindful of the type of oil you use for cooking and how you heat it. Opt for oils with higher smoke points for frying if you do fry, but generally, less frying and more baking. Steaming or stir-frying with minimal oil is healthier. Avoid reusing cooking oil at home. When it comes to leftovers of foods cooked in oil, particularly fried foods, reheating them often results in a loss of texture anyway, making them less appealing. More importantly, you risk generating more harmful compounds. If you must reheat, gentle heating is preferable to high-temperature frying again. Often, foods like leftover stir-fries can be reheated on the hob with a splash of water or broth to create steam, reducing the need for additional oil or high-dry heat. Fried foods are often best eaten fresh or not reheated at all. This point ties into a larger dietary recommendation to limit processed and fried foods in general. But being aware that reheating can exacerbate the issues makes it even more important to be cautious with leftovers of these types of meals. Focusing on fresh, whole foods cooked with healthier methods is always the cornerstone of a health-promoting diet. And understanding the potential downsides of reheating certain oily or fried leftovers is just another layer of protection for your long-term health, including your brain health and reducing cancer risk. So, we've covered 5 areas where being mindful of how you handle and reheat leftovers can make a difference. Nitrate-rich vegetables, rice, poultry, processed meats, and foods cooked in certain oils. It might seem like a lot to remember, but really, it boils down to a few simple principles. Firstly, think about cooking smaller portions if you know certain foods don't reheat well or carry higher risks. Eating fresh is always the gold standard. Secondly, if you do have leftovers, rapid cooling and proper storage in the refrigerator below 4° or 40° WAF are absolutely crucial for minimizing bacterial growth and chemical changes. Don't leave food sitting out for hours. Thirdly, be selective about which foods you reheat. Some are riskier than others. Nitrate-rich greens and processed meats are best avoided for reheating if possible, or only reheated very carefully and once. Rice and poultry can be reheated, but they require thorough heating to a high temperature and should only be reheated one time, after being stored correctly. Foods cooked in lots of oil or fried foods also pose potential issues upon reheating due to changes in fats. Fourthly, if you do reheat, ensure it's heated thoroughly and evenly, and only reheat the portion you plan to eat immediately. Avoid multiple reheatings of the same food. These aren't drastic, life-altering changes, but rather small shifts in how we approach our everyday meal preparation and leftovers. Think of it not as a burden, but as a way of being more intentional and caring for yourself. Every time you make a conscious choice to handle your food safely, you're actively reducing your exposure to potential toxins, harmful compounds, and inflammatory triggers that can accumulate over time and contribute to the risks of diseases like cancer and dementia. It's about empowering yourself in the kitchen, making informed decisions that support your body's ability to stay healthy and vibrant as you age. You have control over these simple habits, and they add up to make a significant difference to your overall well-being. Don't let the information overwhelm you. Just pick 1 or 2 things to focus on changing this week, like being extra careful with how quickly you cool down rice or trying to eat leftover spinach cold instead of reheating it. Small steps create lasting habits. Remember, your health journey is about progress, not perfection. Nobody expects you to suddenly become a food safety expert overnight. It's about building awareness and making better choices more often. Taking simple steps like being mindful of reheating certain foods is a powerful way to protect your long-term health, including your cognitive function. Keeping your body's burden of toxins and inflammation low supports not only physical health, but brain health too. The connection between what we eat and how our brains function is becoming increasingly clear, and small dietary adjustments can have profound effects over time. Have you ever noticed a difference when you've reheated certain foods? Are there any foods you already avoid reheating? I'd love to hear about your experiences and any tips you might have in the comments below. Sharing our knowledge helps everyone. If you found this information helpful and feel more empowered to make smart choices in your kitchen, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps us reach more people who could benefit from this information. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos packed with practical tips for living your healthiest, happiest life at any age. We're on this journey together, learning and growing. Remember, every day is an opportunity to make choices that support your health and vitality. Keep exploring, keep learning, and most importantly, keep living your best life at every age. Thank you for watching.